I would love to see some changes come to the armor system in Helldivers 2, mainly because the more common perks that show up on great-looking armor don't really interest me as much as my favorite perk, Democracy Protects, which, if you are familiar with that perk, you know it is one of the best, if not the best perk in the game if you're trying to stay alive, like if you're going for survival. But I can't help but look at the ever-growing collection of armor in my armory and think how much it would just simply be great to have more to wear, and there's stuff in there I'm never gonna wear. And many are suggesting that the devs add Transmog, and initially I actually agreed with that request, but after the CEO pushed back on the idea, I think some armor updates could help the developers meet us in the middle. I think they could still retain restrictions for certain perks while also promoting more customization and personalization in the game. For those that don't know, Transmog is a feature that allows you to change the appearance of your armor to any appearance, meaning you could put on a light armor set and run like the Scout perk and then make your armor look big and bulky, or vice versa. You could go the other direction. And if you want to tell me what you think about this, you can check to see if I'm live right now and discussing it, because this video will redirect to a live stream. And if you missed the live show, you can click the link at the end of the video and you can check out how the discussion went. Did people agree with me or not? So very quickly, I'm going to give you a backstory here, which I think just shows why members of the community are asking for Transmog. But then I want to look at what happened, because the CEO's response was a bit surprising. He was very strongly, against it. But after that, I will tell you what I think, which will include some good ideas we came up with in our writer's room segment when we planned the video and the follow-up discussion. Now, lastly, I will make a prediction about what the devs end up doing, because I don't think they're going to leave things as they currently are. I voiced in other content, they're going to have to rethink how the war bonds work, given how many of them are going to be in the game over time. So, first, a very quick backstory. The game features various armor perks along with armor stats. Some of those perks actually affect the stats of the armor and some do not. My favorite perk, as I already said, is Democracy Protects, because it has a 50% chance to not die when taking lethal damage, and it also prevents all damage from bleeding if your chest hemorrhages. Currently, it only shows up on roughly 3 to 4 armor pieces, and 2 of them are identical. Their colors are just different. So it really only feels like there's 3 pieces, because you're not actually changing the armor, you're just changing the color when you switch between 2 of the 4. One of them is the Savior of the Free armor, which players could get when they pre-purchased the game or when they did the Super Citizen Edition. And like many of my fellow gamers out there, I really only enjoy wearing pre-order or deluxe armor. When you get that with the special edition, I only usually wear that for about the first week, and then I want to wear the other stuff that I'm unlocking. Then there are perks like extra padding. Okay, that provides a higher armor rating. So this allows you to wear medium armor, and then you get 150 on your armor rating, and that's the heavy armor rating. So when you put on a piece of heavy armor, it's 150, but when you run medium, you can run extra padding and get that 150. So you maintain your speed, you maintain your stamina regen of medium armor, but with the armor rating of a heavy set. Extra padding also shows up on heavy armor as well. So if you want to be as tanky as possible, throw on a heavy set and put on that extra padding. Then there are some perks that are clearly tied to the look of the armor, like Medkit shows up on all 3 armor classes, light, medium, and heavy, and you can tell the color scheme and the overall feel of the armor is the same. They're kind of wanting you to look sort of like a field medic. But because certain perks seem to show up more than others, like servo assisted or fortified, community members started requesting Transmog. Currently, there are well over 70 pieces of armor to choose from, and I'm not talking about helmets and capes. I'm just talking about the main armor that you put on your body. Having only 4 options for Democracy Protects, and 2 of those are that same armor set, I just don't feel like that's the right way to have this set up. I get why folks want Transmog. I really do. I'm not really changing my armor, and it's kind of lame to be wearing the same armor set for weeks at a time, because I just value that perk so much. Now, the CEO responded, so let's look at what happened. So he responded rather strongly to this. He replied to a tweet about Transmog and he said, "We are not doing Transmog. It doesn't make sense. Equipment looks different because it has different effects. Swapping one for the other is like having an apple that tastes like bacon or the other way around." To be fair, an apple that tasted like bacon would be amazing. Invent it, sell it, you'll be a billionaire. But to be quite honest, even though I don't think Transmog is the solution, his response does not line up with most of the armor sets. I actually think he's overstating this. There are a handful where I could say, oh yeah, the appearance of that armor and the perks are definitely lining up, like with the medic perk. But the Exterminator armor, as an example, Exterminator armor is medium and it has fortified, but so does some heavy armor like Battlemaster. And if you look at these armor sets, I see no visual indication as to why they have fortified. One's huge and bulky, and the other is not at all. It also is clear that armor class does not restrict every perk. Scout is only available on light armor, but then you have things like Medkit, and that can land on all three classes of armor. So the community is kind of split on this. I see people saying, like, let's just let us look how we want. Who really cares? And when we were discussing this in a writer's room segment that I do with my members, we landed on some good suggestions. So let me give you my thoughts on this. First, I would love to see armor perks something that you toggle in your loadout, okay? And this would be restricted by the armor class still. Like, there's still things you couldn't pick. So if you want to run the scout perk, you would need to equip light armor. And what this does is it retains the feel that certain armor styles that are maybe more stealthy or more tanky, that would still limit some of your choices. If you've unlocked a ton of light or a ton of medium armor like I have, just let me pick the medium armor and then I can designate the perk that I want. So I could pick any of the medium armor sets right now, and I could run Democracy Protects. That would be a great way for me to still work within where they want that perk landing, but also have control over what I look like. There is a ton of great looking and medium armor sets, especially is where I'm looking. There's a ton of them, and I don't use them simply because I don't care about throwing grenades farther, right? That just isn't a perk that I'm ever going to value. I have the perk that I like, and it's currently working against my sense of customization and personalization. Now, another reason I don't agree with the CEO completely is the helmets and the capes have no perks. So certain helmets and capes that I really like simply can't be worn unless I want to look really goofy, like nothing matches, nothing lines up. Now I know there's like 2 helmets that have hidden perks. I'll talk about that in a second. And this is when another suggestion I think came in that could help. You could come up with sort of a shader system or a color swatch system. It would be a little bit easier, I think, to mix and match my armor pieces if I could set a shader for the whole set so that they kind of match. Now, they again might not want to do this because if they want the medic armor sets to always look like that, so you look like a medic, they may be against sort of letting you change the color of the armor. Some might push against it, saying, listen, the color scheme of the capes, the helmets, and the armor sets, they're meant to look that way in conjunction with the War Bonds theme or in conjunction with the theme of the armor itself. But I see no reason for rigidity here. The game is super lighthearted and fun. It's not a hardcore MMORPG where, you know, a sword or a helmet have to look a certain way because, well, the story around the helmet or the sword or the place of origin in the game or who you killed to get it. My question for the CEO and the devs would be, what's the harm in increasing customization and personalization? Is anybody running armor perks right now and thinking, well, this armor's appearance and the perks, it's really telling the story. It's really making me get more immersed, especially given the lack of perks on helmets and capes. Now, again, I see that the CEO has a point. Running a scout light armor set and making yourself look big and bulky with transmog would be a little silly, and vice versa, right? If you run the tankiest armor in the game and then you transmog it to look like a light armor set with, you know, like all trimmed down and small, that would be a little silly. They can retain armor class restrictions for certain perks while meeting the requests for Transmog sort of in the middle. It's not a total change to what they're doing now. So what's my prediction on what they're actually going to do? Well, first, I think it's obvious. They will not be walking back the CEO's stance on Transmog. They would certainly have, they could have a change of heart, but he worded his response so strongly that I severely doubt that we ever see Transmog in the game. But I do think we will see two aspects of the game reworked. The reward system and sort of the war bond system. I think that's the first area we're going to see some changes. They already indicated they would be looking at the reward system in the wake of players complaining about not getting medals. And I have made numerous suggestions about making older war bonds sort of drop in price, like the per medal price, so you could spend way less medals to get those older items. Once you have, between 6 to 10 war bonds in the game, some of those older ones need to sort of have like a sale price on the individual items. And I know people push back on that, but I think it's just going to be too much of a good thing. You want to allow returning or new players to feel some sense of approachability within the reward system rather than feel like they're drowning in a sea of 12 war bonds after the game has been out for a year. I also think the armor system, I think it'll get a quality pass. I think there'll be some changes. Helmets all having the exact same stats, but also no perks is odd, especially with armor sets coming with the war bonds. They have like a clear style and theme, but the capes and the helmets are just there for what? They don't change anything. They just obviously complete the look. The sheer amount of volume that the game is going to have one day is going to require some changes. We're eventually going to have double-digit war bonds. I mean, imagine scrolling through 10 different war bonds if you're new or you're returning to the game. Even now, if you're not done with the standard war bond because it has way more pages and you always have to scroll down to the others, it just doesn't seem like it's built for that longevity once you get into the double digits. Eventually, we're going to have hundreds of armor pieces to choose from. It would be significantly easier to make those choices if perks were removed from the armor and set in the loadout in accordance to the armor that you have chosen. The stats are pretty straightforward, I think. I don't think it's that hard to read the stats, but scrolling through hundreds of pieces of armor looking for a certain perk, that just sounds counterproductive. You want people looking at the armor and asking the question, what do I want to look like? And then yes, once they pick their armor, it would then go to your loadout and say, well, these are the perks available on medium, these are the perks available on light and hard, and so forth. The armor, the war bonds, the weapons, the stratagems, they're all part of the game's appeal. I think the fact that people found hidden stat bumps and maybe hidden perks on two of the helmets, one of them is the Trailblazer, for example, the devs likely have plans to update and change how armor works. But if you make war bonds and armor cumbersome to navigate by the sheer amount that's in the game, it's going to work against motivating players to unlock and get new stuff. It'll just seem like this giant pile of things that are difficult to navigate, and then it's difficult to feel that transmission of value of new shiny things when there's just too much of it and it's not organized well. Those are things I think they have to think about. I also think if armor switches to completely cosmetic, you don't have to worry about putting good perks on the premium war bond armor. You could just add new perks to the game whenever a new war bond hits, and then everybody can try out those new perks wherever they land. Right now, the devs are having to avoid putting any new or stronger perks on premium war bond armor pieces because you don't want to get accused of pay to win. Now, obviously, the premium currency is totally earnable through just playing, and it would still be, I think, a nice move to make armor purely cosmetic. Now, I do know they're putting really great guns sometimes. Well, that's debatable, right? But they are putting guns on the premium war bonds, and that's ripe for criticism. I think they're probably going to be gun shy, no pun intended. They're going to be gun shy, putting really great guns on those premium war bonds because people say, well, hey, you got to pay money to get those. Well, not necessarily, and given the game's popularity, everybody seems to have dropped the pointless debate about if Helldivers 2 is pay to win. All those people look pretty silly right now. They jumped the gun and spoke rather ignorantly. Helldivers 2 is the only game I know of that lets you grind for a premium currency to then purchase the premium battle pass, right? There are games like Fortnite where you can carry the V-Bucks from one premium pass and then buy the next. but you can't just like play Fortnite enough to buy the premium battle pass. You can't play Fall Guys enough to buy the premium battle pass. So they let you do that in this game. So if you're going to want people to come back and be motivated, you got to organize those things and maybe even make them more approachable for customization and personalization. So I agree with the CEO, sort of. Transmog would not help, but changes to the armor system that promotes more personalization, more customization, I think that would be a welcome thing. But that's just what I think. Now it's time to hear what you think, and you can do that in a comment below or in my live stream, and we put that in a card right there for you to click on. Love to see you.